Hey, everybody, welcome to the Chris and Dan show. So, Dan and I are sitting here discussing what we should have a conversation about. 'Cause, we want to bring our thoughts and share them with whoever finds us interesting, would like to see what we have to say about a certain topic.
That's right.
So, Dan and I went back and forth on different topics that, we might find interesting, but we didn't think the general public would. So, we fell on this one. We're going with the
No,
pussy.
you fell on this one.
Well, you agreed. So, Pussification of America. That's what we're going with, and that's gonna be the original title, so
Now, I
long
want
as
to
YouTube
preface
doesn't
this.
ban it.
I only agreed because we had nothing else. I think we should limit the discussion to 20 minutes max and then do a song each.
Alright, sounds like a plan. Um, so I'll go ahead and throw this out there. So, I know I've said
Yeah.
this on a few of our videos, so this shouldn't come as a shock to anybody who watches us regularly, that
Mhm.
I think there is an intentional effort to make men weak in
1
America.
minute in, we're banned. Just
And
going out on a
I
limb.
I'm not blaming anybody, I'm just saying an intentional
Okay.
effort by powers that be, right? Now
Okay.
now there is, the fourth turning, right, which is summarized into
Love that book.
which you're reading, right? Currently reading?
Yes, I got a little story about that too, but yeah, I'm
Okay,
reading.
basically the book you can summarize into hard times make strong men make good times make weak men, and weak men make hard times. It's the four cycles to as the fourth turning has. There's four
Right.
cycles. So what instigates the fourth turning is how man, specifically men, change, right?
Right.
Again, so right now we've gone through the period where things were very good. So we are now making weak men, right? Now, so according to the fourth turning, it doesn't necessarily have to be intentional, or it has to be no
Well,
power
says
that be.
says you, right?
Right. So what does the fourth turning say?
No,
On May
that's what it says, but it doesn't go as far as you did of saying, like, this is, intentional.
Well, what I'm saying is it could be unintentional. It's just the fact that
Okay.
there's good times, there's prevalence of everything, nobody has concerns. So
Right.
they become concerned about every trivial thing, which I think is going on in society right now. Since you don't have to worry about where you're getting your next meal or how you're gonna provide for your roof over your head, everybody's worried about very trivial things, right?
Right, right.
So, making weak men because they don't have to strive for anything, right? There's no difficulties in their life outside of what they're creating for themselves.
But the whole book, like, sure, I see where your narrative is going, and I don't necessarily disagree. Maybe with the intentional part, but the whole book, the whole purpose of the book is that he specifically lays out in extreme detail how it's actually not intentional. It's just this is how it always works. Like,
Mhm.
so there's no need for human involvement to pull levers to make this happen. This is how it works based on human nature.
So the response by the powers that be, so let's just take for a moment that it is unintentional that men are being pussified, right? Let's say it's unintentional. So
Mhm.
what's happening with the powers that be is they're just playing with what they're fed, right? And what I mean by that is as these people get upset about trivial things, politicians say, they're not necessarily trying to make this occur. They're just dealing with what they've been dealt, right? So they have to deal with these people, and to maintain power, they're playing along with whatever their concerns are, right? What the majority uh,
Right.
are concerned about, politicians or corporations or whatever the case might be, powers that be, they're playing into it, but not necessarily promoting it. Or in effect, by playing into it, they are also promoting it. So that could be a possibility, but so let me say why I think it could also be intentional. So I I think there's forces outside of America that that are playing by the paradigm, um, uh, divide and conquer, right? So
Okay.
if you can find a way to do that within a society, it makes it much easier to either overthrow it intentionally or see it collapse from within. So I think that's a possibility too.
So let me break down the turnings for you, okay? I pulled it up here. So according to Strauss and Howe, who came up with this theory, well, extremely detailed and well-researched theory, the first turning is a high. This occurs after a crisis. So during the high, institutions are strong and individualism is weak. Society is confident about where it wants to go collectively, though those outside the majority often feel stifled by conformity.
Okay,
So
so
according
sorry, just to interrupt just for a moment. So I wasn't alive at this time, but I would say that sounds like McCarthyism, when everybody had faith in government and society as a whole, news media, and if you were called a communist, basically you were through, right? You might even wind up in
so
jail. So that was like in the 50s,
uh
McCarthyism.
yeah, you're right. According to the authors, the most recent first turning in the US was post World War II, beginning in 46 and ending with the assassination of JFK in 63.
Sounds right. Yeah,
The next thing
McCarthyism.
is the awakening.
Yep,
So
that's
this is an
the
era where the
hippies.
hippie movement. Yeah,
Yep.
this is an era where institutions are attacked in the name of personal and spiritual autonomy. Just when society is reaching its high tide of public progress, people suddenly tire of social discipline and want to recapture a sense of self awareness, spirituality, and personal authenticity. I mean, you could argue that's right now, but Strauss and Howe say the U.S.'s most recent awakening was the consciousness revolution, like Chris said, hippie movement from the mid 60s to the 80s. Then you got the unraveling. This is the third turning. The mood of the era is in many ways the opposite of a high. This is when I was born. The authors say highs come
Well,
after.
time out. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you. See, I would not necessarily agree with the time when you were born. I was an adult living through that. Well, not an adult, but old enough to comprehend what's going on, and it didn't seem like it does now. This more seems like an unraveling now, to
Yeah.
me.
So they say the most recent unraveling in the US began in the 80s and includes the culture war and all that. So that's the unraveling is when institutions are weak and distrusted while individualism is strong and flourishing. So if that lasted from the 80s until roughly the 2000s, because um, everything's probably about 20 years, 20 to 22 years,
Hmm.
then that would put us at the 2000s where the crisis begins, and maybe the optimistics will say 2020 is when it was supposed to end, but it doesn't look like we're ending yet. So either we're close to ending the crisis, or some people think the crisis barely started. Let me just read the crisis, what it is. So this is an era of destruction, often involving war or revolution, in which institutional life is destroyed and rebuilt in response to a perceived threat to the nation's survival. After the crisis, civic authority revives, cultural expression redirects towards community purpose, and people begin to locate themselves as members of a larger group. The authors say the fourth turning in the US began um, with the Wall Street crash of 1929 and climax in World War II. The authors also assert the millennial generation, which they describe as a hero archetype. That's me, baby, hero. I'm your hero, guys. Shows many similar traits to those of the GI youth, which they describe as including rising civic engagement. So this is where to me it gets unclear. There's some people that say we're in the middle of a crisis now. Some people saying we might be ending our crisis. Some people are saying it's just starting.
See, to me, from the definitions read out of the fourth turning, I would say we're in the unraveling, personally.
Oh, you think we're in the unrest? Because the way they started it in the book, they put like the 63, where
No,
Kennedy
I
killed
know,
and
but I don't see that there's any kind of coming back to some sort of formality right now, which is
mhm,
describing in the fourth phase. I just don't see that that's happening. If anything, it's just unraveling even more. It's getting worse and worse. So I
yeah.
don't see any new institutions forming or people coming coalescing around anything as a whole. Yes, I see tribes. I see individual tribes coalescing around their beliefs, but as far as a whole and coalition, no, no, it's more an unraveling, in my opinion. In my opinion, it's just my
All
opinion.
right. But anyways, like how does this relate to like culture? Right now, it seems like everyone is fighting and picking a side to be a part of. So it sounds like not individualism at all. Um, I personally like when we're thinking for ourselves, independent thinkers, rather than just two ideologies arguing on any social platform you go on. Um,
Well, that could so the tribes, the formation of tribes, that could be well, I guess that's a lack of individualism. I mean, it's both, right? So if you're from an individual from one tribe meeting with an individual from another tribe, then you two argue. But it's really your tribe's beliefs. I mean, there's so many people you can talk with today that you ask them specific questions to their belief system and they just start yelling at you because they don't have answers. They're not with their tribe to back them up or provide them answers. And
right.
they just get upset and start yelling.
So how does this relate to your opening proposition of the US, or actually the world? You could say the world is getting more
Is it though? I mean, would you say China's getting more pussified?
the Western world.
Yeah, I would agree with that. For sure I would agree with that. Um yeah, I just don't see this ending anytime soon, personally. I I mean, like I've said, I think we're heading for war of some sort.
Yeah, but do you think that the culture is forcing people to pick a side, like, you know,
Well,
individualism
sh-
versus
sure. So is it basically getting back to the initial question? Is it intentional or is it just a happening?
who cares?
It's
Is
happening.
Yeah, so why do
Uh,
you think people are feeling that way?
Well, I honestly think that to a degree, at least a degree, the fourth turning has it right. I think that summarization that I laid out initially, I that seems to make sense to me because
Mhm.
as a person, as an individual, as a human being, when things come easy to you, it's a it's a difficult pill to swallow when things come hard again, right? It's like back back during the Dow, right? 1929, Black Friday, right? Um
No, that wasn't Black Friday
Tuesday,
was, 84,
Tuesday,
but yeah, yeah.
Tuesday.
Mhm.
So there were people that were so heavily invested in the stock market that they were jumping out of their skyscrapers because they didn't want to face the hard times that were about to come.
Right.
Death was easier to them,
Mhm.
and I honestly believe that's the way a human being is designed to a degree, right?
Yeah.
Like they're most people I think are conservative, and I don't necessarily mean politically. What I mean is it's difficult for them to realize there's changes ahead and you're going to have to change to overcome. They don't like that. They like the way things are, right? I don't
Right.
want they don't want to be pushed into new environments. They want to stay within what they know. And it's understandable. I mean, you go back to the caveman days, you just didn't eat or drink anything you came across. You first had to make sure it was safe, and it's a matter of being aware of your surroundings. It's a matter of being aware of what you're dealing with. It's a it's a protection. It's a safety, and when people are pushed into things they have no
Mm.
clue what's about to happen, it scares the shit out of them.
Yeah. Do
And
you think do you
go ahead.
think technology expedites the seculums? The Meaning, it took humans what, like it wasn't until like we started walking and then we started talking like thousands of years later, like in organized languages. And then that really paved the way for government, which is a technology. It wasn't until language that you can rule from afar, in the past, like caveman days, you could rule, but you had to rule locally, like just your own little tribe.
Hmm.
Language allowed governments to scale controlling the masses, and then writing, and then people's ability to read, and then it expedited quickly to where we are now with my background of AIs being able to even predict the future, maybe better than we can. And I think this stuff expedites it. So I don't know how accurate this fourth turning is going to be for much longer as far as the 20-year cycles
because of AI.
because of the rapid advancements. Like, I think that scales, that speeds up what would naturally happen. Like, technology, the way I see technology, it's like an enzyme. Like, the way an enzyme works, it only works on reactions that are already going to happen in the body. It just going to take a lot longer. So the enzyme reduces the time it needs for the inevitable to happen very quickly. That's basically how drugs work. But and so I see it the same way. Like, tech, what's already like going to happen in this very well researched fourth turning principles, it's just throwing like a bunch of catalyst into it with technology.
Well, let's take your what you um, offered there, and let's run with that in terms of AI predicting the future and things like that, right? So,
Yeah.
if those capabilities are realized, there will be no more turnings because the AI
Or
would
will
know
there
it's
just be
come.
turnings like every day, like every week instead of every
No, no,
20 years?
no, no. I think it would end entirely because w- they would divide. They would. So I don't want to get into the matrix, but uh, I don't necessarily. It would get.
All roads
I
lead
don't.
to the matrix.
No, I see. I don't think it would get that powerful in terms of. Well, I mean, I guess it could, where you develop androids or robots of some sort, and you give it um, superhuman intellect.
Yeah.
I suppose then they could force humans to do things. For whatever reason, I just my gut tells me we don't go there. We don't. It's not Terminator. It's not Matrix. I just don't think we're heading there necessarily. But where I do think we're very likely heading is the people who throw the switches. In other words, the power, right? Whoever has the power will use that and use it nefariously at times, right? So
Mm.
if they're being told by AI, hey, this is about to occur, they'll just stomp it down. They'll just end, right? Because they have ultimate power, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean they have to
Sure.
kill these people. It just means like how you have on a minor scale right now, you have cancel culture, which again works on a minor scale.
Yeah.
It silences people because they're embarrassed or they're ashamed or whatever the case might be. No, it'll go much deeper than that, right? They'll take total control of you somehow in terms of economics and any other number of ways, right? They'll make sure you get fired, you have no job, your car gets impounded, whatever the case might be. I mean, once somebody has that kind of power in which they can they can control the AI if it's left up to one or two or a dozen people or 150, right? Who I can't remember who says that, but there's 150 people that control the world. It's a dude you like. I think he's Indian.
Chamath. Yeah.
Yeah. So if it's like that, right? 150 people control the world. Of course, they'll control AI. I would assume, and that's to me that seems just a little more realistic than anything like the Matrix or Terminator. But I think what might come is you might have pods, right? Where you tell people, hey, you're miserable in your real life, right? And this
Yeah.
could be another way to control this situation, the four turnings. Hey, you're miserable in your real life. We can put you in this pod. It'll be like the Matrix, but it's of your own self choosing, right? And you can live in this other world that everything's perfect for you and you love it, and we'll feed you the bug slosh through the tube, into you, so you stay.
Just to keep you alive, but you won't
Yeah,
need to matter about liking it or not because you're
you
not even perceiving it.
yeah, you're in another world. When we're
Yeah.
feeding you the bug slosh, you're eating steak and strawberry shortcake, right?
Well, it's somewhat related to the guy we were gonna interview today about MDMA being used therapeutically. I mean, it's basically a drug that takes you to another realm.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
hallucinogen.
yep. Uh, so I mean, biologically, these things do exist. Like, these chemicals like ayahuasca and all that. they existed in the past too, so it's nothing new. It's just the fact that we can synthetically do it now, whether it's with VR or actual compounds in your body. I mean, we
Yeah,
have two options really.
yeah. I mean, we're very close to being able to put all these different mechanisms together, right? Like you're saying, you could take a hallucinogen, or maybe you don't need it. Maybe you take Elon Musk's chip that he's going to put in your head,
Yeah.
and somehow that controls your thought behaviors in terms of, hey, do I believe this VR? Is this
Yep.
real?
Yep. Well, they did a study where I can't remember the amount of days. I think it was 2 weeks. They put glasses on study participants for 2 weeks to where they saw everything upside down.
Hmm,
And then they took the glasses off, and the effects lasted 2 weeks with the glasses off. People still saw like everything
upside
upside down.
down.
So it's
So
your brain adjusted, right? Um,
well, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's how it comes into your brain upside down. There's a mechanism in your head that reverses that. You knew
right,
that,
right.
right?
Yeah, yeah, I knew that, but that's not the point. The point is your brain can adjust to
Well, that's the thing, that mechanism breaks, so
yes,
it's just working
working
the way
the
it's
way
being
it was
perceived.
the way it's perceived, but not intended by some
Yeah,
creator. They didn't
yeah,
intend for us to see upside down,
yeah.
or maybe we do see upside down and we just don't know.
We do. Well, there's a
Yeah,
mechanism in your head that flips it.
yeah. So I mean, but yeah. So one has to wonder with the VR and all this stuff, like how long until it has like permanent effects, even when you stop the
Mm,
stimulus.
that
That's where
would
I'm
be
getting at.
something. That'd be
Like
something. So you don't need to be in the tube.
I mean, somebody's gonna figure it out. Like, okay, we put them in the tube, and then we actually don't need to even run the tube like that often. Like, we can conserve energy and just put it on like an hour a day is enough to maintain it,
Mm.
maintain the perception. So
But
it's
I
even like if people are thinking, well, no one's ever going to use that many resources to maintain this. Well, your brain will help by taking over the processing power if given enough
what
stimulus.
what would be the benefit to that? So see, what I'm describing in terms of the tube and making people happy within that tube is it would allay any kind of revolution or problems. You would just take these people and put them in a place that they're happy to be.
We'll have a generation of pacifists.
Well, basically, you will imprison people. I mean, of their
Yeah,
own they will
of their own.
volunteer for it,
Yeah.
right? Of their own choosing, but you will imprison people. So I'm not
Hmm.
sure what perceived benefit there would be to allowing these people to still walk around. I mean, yeah, I guess they wouldn't probably be revolutionaries, right? If they're walking around happy.
Maybe that's the real green energy, like is using humans' mitochondria just like the Matrix to power the machines.
Sure, maybe. You put them in the tubes and you get something
I
out of it.
mean, have you seen the AI rendering of the future? The AI itself came up with this.
Mm-mm.
Um, I'll find it. Can you see it?
Yeah, robot.
Yeah, this is probably like a few months ago, a few months old. But they asked the AI to generate like human evolution art, like from what it's seen from the past, leading to the future, farther
Mm.
ahead than what we can see. So, I mean, this is still like technology in its infancy, but it's interesting to see what the AI came up with. It's only 39 seconds.
So does that lead to a robot? I guess, huh?
Watch,
Start,
watch. It's
start,
more interesting than that.
all right. It starts as a chimpanzee. We're to modern day. All
Yeah,
right.
let me go back a little. Yeah, and that's it. So at
So
the end, we end up in something like we're just
there's
part of like a power grid for somebody.
well, I briefly saw an alien in there from like the movie The Aliens.
Yeah,
Briefly.
was there.
Yeah.
So we're at the start of it with this, right? With the
Hmm.
fun, and then eventually becomes more and more ingrained in us to the point where we are this thing, to the point where then it becomes organic again and then plugged in somewhere. So at the end of the day, I mean, everyone knows we generate a lot of electricity in our bodies. Like
So, so,
mitochondria power it all, neurons
so,
power it all.
so I have one final point. I know you only want to go about 20 minutes. We're at 26, but um, what would be what would be the end result if you went down this road as this AI?
Well, we're not smart enough because we don't have. It's like asking a caveman, from
No, no,
BC,
no,
like
no, no, no.
look
I
in the
understand.
sky. Like,
Sure,
do you think one day we can go there? They're like, wow,
that's
crazy.
not really what I'm asking. What I'm saying is assume what we saw in those images. That's the end result, right? What I'm saying is I think humans cease to exist then because how do you procreate?
Yeah, and
So
we probably do.
maybe that's the intent, right? I mean, we advance technology and we can reduce the population on the earth. There's a lot of powerful people that say we need to reduce the population to half a billion. Um,
Yeah,
so who knows? Maybe that's the end goal.
I mean, it's not
People
like
can't
humans.
you can't procreate if you're in a tube.
The world existed long before humans ever set foot.
Sure.
It's not like it needs us. It was here way before us. It
Hmm.
wasn't made for us.
Well, that you can have an argument.
You can have argument on scientifically. There's no proof that it was
Oh, of
made for us.
course. Yeah, scientifically, absolutely. I would say humans, since it's been here, humanity, since it's been here, has evolved the Earth in certain ways. I mean,
Mhm.
global warming, climate change. People would say for certain that's true. Again, I'm not
Yeah,
sure, but um, yeah, if you're strictly speaking from a science base, yeah, there would be no reason for the
from a
planet to.
science based only, like it's a miracle we're here. The fact that we even exist, like bacteria,
Mhm. A billion things
bacteria
had
were
to go
just
right.
fine. Bacteria can survive. If the goal, this is why I think ultimately it leads to a creator. Like, even though I'm not necessarily religious, because if it was just survival, bacteria and archaea figured it out. I mean, they could survive in volcanoes. They can survive with no oxygen. They could survive in any environment,
A
and they
little,
they multiply by dividing. So
yeah. You're
it
just
wasn't about survival.
And you're just taking one very small segment of what it took to make humans. There's literally a billion things that had to go right in order for
Yeah.
humans to be created.
Well,
So,
they've shown how bacteria, like two bacteria, got together in one of these crazy environments, and they didn't decide. It's probably chemistry that made one bacterial cell specialize in something,
mhm,
and the other specialize in something, and soon they start over like hundreds, maybe thousands of years, it became a multicellular organism.
sure,
And humans have something like 20 trillion cells, and all of them specialized.
yep.
I
Uh,
mean, most of them specialized.
and you're just talking from a biological standpoint of what needs to occur. There's other things that had to occur, right? You had to have the magnetic fields. You had to have our solar system to protect the Earth itself,
Yeah.
right? So we didn't wind up like Mars or anywhere else that has no
Yep.
atmosphere. I mean, there's just so many things in play. Like literally a billion things had to go perfectly right in order for.
Oh, more than that. So it's like a miracle that we're here. So it's not so far fetched to conceive of humanity no longer being here. I mean,
Sure. I
the
mean,
Earth would still exist
well,
until
if
it
there
blows up.
completely, if there is no God, certainly there will be an end to humans. That's my belief. If there is no God, there will be an end to humans. Period.
I think even if there is,
No, I mean according to the Bible, at least the Christian Bible, there's humans are always to be. They just the earth becomes perfect again,
mm,
shoot Adam and Eve, what they live in.
well, the Earth is on a collision course, like our galaxy is on a collision course with the other galaxy soon. Like in the next, soon being the next 100,000 years. So, I mean, science is showing that it's not going to be
Mm.
ultimately.
Again, that's assuming there's no God.
I think even if there is, like, what if there's another Earth that comes out of that?
Yeah, I don't think so. At least that's not
Because
what the
to God,
Bible.
a billion years is like a minute. So,
Well, no, that's not true either. I watched something on that. It works both ways for God. You have no idea what time is to God.
sure. I mean, there is no such thing, maybe. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not
Sorry,
inconceivable.
sorry, didn't mean to go on a little bit of religion here, but point is yeah,
But it
I
doesn't have to be separate from this. I mean, it could be congruent with this
sure,
line of thought.
sure. I think even the Bible leaves it to that, right? It just says at some point with revelation, just things evolve to a point that does not please God. That's when things step in and happen. You have free will.
So, yeah. Well, that AI rendering shows that eventually probably not.
Yeah.
I mean, you can even argue we kind of lost a lot of it with the tech we already have.
Okay. So here I got one last question. We're just got to keep prolonging this. So let's say you live in a mud hut in Africa, right? Very difficult to come by food. Very difficult to sustain yourself. So they're not in the fourth turning. They're not in this. Uh,
Well,
you
they're
know,
in that crisis mode constantly.
yeah. They never climb out of strong men make good times,
Right.
right? They're never out of that mode. They just never get to the good times for whatever reason. But anyhow, um, if you're in a mud hut in Africa or anywhere else, and you find it very difficult to sustain yourself, your children are dying because of hunger or disease, would you volunteer for that tube in which you're always happy? I think I would.
Yeah. I mean, if survival,
I mean, you're
if
gonna
you're,
live,
yeah, that's the first and probably last thing I would start with.
and you're
Um,
gonna be happy, not miserable,
you,
not
I don't
starving.
even need that second part. Just the first. If it's that dire, that yeah, that's all you need. You don't need to go more than that.
Right. So if they can develop, so one, they develop these tubes. Two, the control over the human. But third, if they can develop some sort of benefit from people being in these tubes outside of just control, but some, like you said, the
I think
mitochondria,
it's the energy
right?
and
If they
the
can develop a
potential
way,
energy.
if they can develop a way to get energy, yeah, I mean, all poor places will wind up in these tubes because why wouldn't you? I know
Yeah.
I would.
Hmm.
So interesting. Hmm. Well, let's leave it at that.